Hello and welcome to my presentation. My name is Humphrey and I'm a second-year part-time PhD researcher at York St John University, working through the International Centre for Community Music. My research examines how the concepts of ownership, empowerment and transformation are being used within community music discourse. This presentation aims to give you an overview of my PhD that could hopefully lead on to some further discussions later in the week. Language plays a critical role in our lives, and scholars in the field of sociolinguistics have drawn a connection between the way that using specific terms or phrases may have rippling effects in society. This idea can be reinforced through Paul G. and Norman Fairclough's outline of language working in synergy with actions and interactions to develop discourse. Discourse are present in all aspects of life, and as G proposes, can often differ between fields and different social groups or practices. They provide meaning towards language and actions and are often influenced by broader political and institutional bodies. As community music is a diverse field of practice working across many different areas, it is hardly surprising that our discourse is so varied. The concepts of ownership, empowerment and transformation are often drawn upon in our discourse as being cornerstones to our practice, either as being inherent within the process or as an outcome of the work. For instance, Tim Joss at the 1994 ISME CMA proceedings described how to enable an engaging and meaningful music-making experience. The facilitator must support the group to feel a sense of ownership through the project by encouraging them to make critical decisions on the setup and running of the project. Joss suggests that the role of the community musician is to respond to the group's needs. Similarly, Phil Mullen describes how music making within a youth music mentorship programme could elicit an empowering experience through providing them with an opportunity to develop their new skills and set their own goals that they would like to achieve. Lastly, Bridie Lee Bartlett and Lee Higgins dedicate a section in the Oxford Handbook of Community Music exploring transformation as a critical facet of the work of community musicians. These three examples, of which there are many more, highlight the critical role that these concepts play in community music discourse. With the understanding that discourse plays such an integral role within our field, it is imperative that we have a clear theoretical understanding of the language and the phrases that we are using, and how that resonates with the practices we are engaging within. The concepts of ownership, empowerment and transformation, although extensively drawn upon, have had very little theoretical examination. And this PhD and this research aims to examine how the concepts are being used, how they're being operationalised within community music discourse. Guiding this research are three questions. What constitutes a form of ownership, empowerment and transformation? How are community musicians supporting these concepts within their practice? And to what extent does a music project bring about ownership, empowerment and transformation? And what are the implications of doing so? In order to answer these questions, the research takes a two-stage approach, examining how these concepts are being used in community music discourse. Firstly, a critical discourse analysis will be undertaken on three publication platforms that are seen as being influential to the field of community music. Norman Fairclough writes that critical discourse analysis can be a way of examining the different power relations at play in society through analysing the different discourses and the way that they change and develop. The Sounding Board journals, the International Society for Music Education Community Music Activity Proceedings, and the International Journal of Community Music were chosen to be analysed as they were seen as being cornerstones to helping continue and develop the practice of community music through sharing the latest research and practices happen within the field. Through the analysis, it was hoped that ideas could be formed as to how these platforms have been used, how these platforms have used these concepts, and how these may have changed and developed over time in response to political and policy changes. Recognising that discourse is inherently a social practice, through undertaking this analysis, it is hoped that ideas may begin to be formed as to the effects that this may have had on the practices of community musicians. The second strand aims to undertake a case study strategy examining three music projects, where it was hoped that ideas may be formed as to how these three concepts are being used within practice. Three specific projects are chosen to be examined through this strategy. Music Spark, a project working with young people living with special educational needs, where the participants are supported to develop their skills as music leaders. The People's Music Collective, working with individuals who've been diagnosed as living with mental health challenges, and where the music making is being used as a form of expression and helping them overcome some of these challenges. And Musing, a project working with young people seen as living in challenging circumstances, where the project aims to help them develop their skills and interests in music. Through each case study, a series of participatory observations, focus groups, and one-to-one interviews are expected to be undertaken, capturing the narratives of facilitators and participants in regard to their ideas of what these three concepts are. By having this critical discourse analysis and the case study, it is hoped that a comprehensive view may be undertaken that could support practitioners and researchers in understanding how these terms are being used within our discourse and the potential implications that these three concepts may have for participants. So my main focus at the moment in the PhD process is writing up the case study of the Music Spark project. Although the data collection has had to be stopped due to the project being halted, I've decided to write up the case study with the data collected in order to see what could be potentially missing and to help me refocus on what I might need to do when the sessions restart and the data collection could resume. Doing this process is helping me start to question some of the aspects of the research, such as how can I capture the participants' narratives? And I'm beginning to think about, if sessions do restart, what is the best ways of collecting these narratives that might not be interviews or focus groups when some of the participants might struggle to partake within that? Now, this case study as well is going to fold into an article at the Frontiers Journal on music education and hegemonia. So I'm using this week to really construct some of those ideas for the journal and try and get some of the ideas down on paper. So furthermore, over the next couple of weeks, I'm beginning working on my data collection for my second case study, the People's Music Collective, which is going to be happening digitally via Zoom. Again, this is providing some more questions as I begin to go through the process, which I'm trying to think through, such as how to host a digital focus group. What will participatory observations be like? And how do I develop the relationships with people that I would normally develop in the space when I'm actually not there in the space with them? And I'm also trying to refocus at the same time and reframe the questions I'm asking in light of how these ideas of my PhD are continuing to develop. So I was trying to think of some questions I would like to discuss further with people, and that would help me push the research on a bit more forward. So one of the first things I was thinking about is really about data collection and specifically around digital approaches. So I'm really interested in hearing about what individuals' experience of collecting data collection is digitally. And what are the areas that need to be thought about, and how do you capture an experience through participatory observations if you can't actually be in there in the space? One of the things I really enjoyed about doing participatory observations previously was getting to experience it with the participants, but obviously digitally that space isn't necessarily there. I also want to question as well and talk to people about how you develop that researcher relationship with people through digital medium if you aren't meeting them face to face. I think it's really good that we can meet up like this, but the relationship's never the same as what it is in the actual space. So I'd be really interested to talk to people further about that. I'm interested and want to listen to people to ask them about what are people's different approaches to capturing the participant's voice instead of doing interviews or focus groups. I find at the minute in the research, I'm often drawn on these ideas as the best ways to capture the participant's experience. But is there other ways? What is the best way? Specifically thinking about some of these groups I'm working with where potentially interviews and focus groups might not be the best mechanism. What are other people's ideas? And what are individuals' different ways of presenting their data collected within the research as well? That's one of the other things I'm thinking about as I'm starting to write up the case study. So that gives a brief overview of my PhD. I hope that provides some foundational blocks that we can talk some more about some of these ideas. And I look very much forward to discussing these further.